Hello, and welcome to Candidates Upfront, a public interest election program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Our November 7th general election is coming up. Citizens who are 18 or older will vote for judges, school directors, and township, borough, and city officials. The deadline to register to vote is October 23rd. To check your voting status, go to vote.pa.gov. That's vote.pa.gov. You can register, change your party, locate your polling place, or apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot. And the deadline to apply for those is October 31st. If you are looking for information on statewide, school, or township races or borough officials, please use the League's online voters guide, vote411.org. That's vote411.org. And for information on countywide and Reading candidates, please stay tuned. The League interviewed candidates in contested races, those who wanted to be interviewed, and for each race, the candidates got the same basic questions and had the same amount of time to answer them. For the League, I'm Judith Cranus, and let's begin.
Hello, and welcome. I'm Kay Herring, a member of the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Two candidates are competing for a chance to be Berks Recorder of Deeds. They are Democrat Fred Schuler and Republican Mary Kozak. You may vote for one. The Recorder of Deeds records all deeds, mortgages, and real estate transfers. The recorder also collects transfer taxes on real estate. The recorder records charters of nonprofit organizations, highway plans, and subdivision plans. Berks County residents file military discharge papers in the office. The term is 4 years, and the current annual salary is $96,043. Each candidate's views are their own and not those of the League or BCTV. This interview is with Fred Schuler. Welcome.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you to the League for hosting this. It really is helpful to get this information out to the public.
Great. I'm going to start off and ask you if you could please tell our viewers about yourself and why you are running.
Well, I'm running because the office needs stronger management. And I first ran for the office back in 2007 because I had been in business for many years in real estate finance and mortgages. And up until that time, several years before I ran, the office of recorder ran pretty smoothly, but then things started to get behind. It got to the point where the recorder of deeds back then was about 6 months behind on recording. And most of my settlements at real estate closings would end with the title person saying how to the buyer, be on the lookout for your deed. And it used to be like, your deed will get to you in several weeks. And then it was a month. Then it got to be 6 months. And I realized something was wrong. And I thought I had the skills to fix that, which I did. I went in the office, and within a short time, we had the office recording things every single day. So I was recorder for 12 years. We did a lot of advancements. We digitized all the documents, so there's an electronic copy available online for every document filed in the recorder's office going back to the year 1752 when Berks was founded. And I want to get back into the office so I can continue what I did to help the office improve.
Okay, thank you. Tell us what education and background you bring to the position.
Okay. So I had 12 years as recorder of deeds. I took that office very seriously, and I learned as much as I could about document recording, computer systems, how to manage the employees, how to motivate them to get them to want to do their job. Before that, I had been in banking and mortgages for 23 years. And that's where I first had interactions with the Recorder of Deeds office. And I love to learn, and I have this thirst for knowledge. I have to know all the little details. So in mortgage operations, you have to review title insurance reports. So I did that often, and I needed to know how did that report get developed, and that's starting from the Recorder of Deeds office. I also have a degree from Kutztown University in management, and that really has helped me in the Recorder's office to learn how to motivate the staff and keep them invested in their positions.
Okay, I think you may have answered this question a little bit, but I'll give you some more time if you want. The question is, what personal qualities do you have that would help you be an effective recorder of deeds?
One of the things that really helped me was my love of history. So I've been pretty much an amateur historian since I was a child, starting with asking my older relatives. I'm looking out the window right here at Penn Street about when they were kids, and my great-grandmother telling me about the farmer's market that was just up the street here in the middle of the street. And when I got into the Recorder of Deeds office, my first few days, I was just astounded by the history that's there. And it gave me this drive to preserve it both physically, the old books that are there, and more important, in an electronic image that we could back up in the event of some type of disaster that could hit a county office, which has happened throughout the state of Pennsylvania and throughout the country, where there's been fires or floods or things as far even as sprinkler systems going off. So we have an electronic image of every single one of those documents dating back to the county's founding.
Great. So one of the things the recorder does is collects real estate transfer taxes. This is the money sellers pay the state and other taxing agencies when a deed to a property is sold. How will you assure that the correct amount is paid promptly to the state and to each agency?
Well, each deed needs to be accompanied by the correct amount of real estate tax. And where it gets a little bit more complicated, because that's a pretty straightforward procedure. You have a $100,000 price in most areas of Berks County besides the city of Reading. That would be $2,000 in tax. 1% goes to the state, 1% gets split between the municipality that the property is in and the school district that it's in. Unless it's in the city of Reading, and that total then is 5% because the city has a much higher portion. The school only gets half of 1%, but the city gets 3.5%. So that's very easy to calculate. Most of our recordings nowadays are electronically done, so you don't even have a check with a certain amount. It just drafts it right from the bank account of that submitter. But what's more important is the deeds that come in without a value, without a price. And that's where we have to make sure we follow the state law that says that the submitter accompany that deed with a statement of value, and they can either ask for an exemption or they have to pay based on the common of level ratio times the tax assessment, which is a complicated issue, but I can get into that further.
Okay, thank you. Please explain the common level ratio and how it affects our taxes.
Okay. So the common level ratio currently in Berks County is 2.51. And what that does is it interprets what is the value today based on a tax assessment back when the county was last assessed in Mass, which was about 1993-94. So what that means is if you would take a property that was assessed at $100,000 back then, theoretically, it's supposed to be worth $251,000, 2.51 times. And the state tax equalization board compiles that ratio. And there's a different ratio for every county in the state. And when you have a new tax assessment, like some counties have done, it starts out at 1. So it's equal. Each year, the values can go up, and unfortunately, in the Great Recession in 2008, that ratio went down. It had gone up to about 1.57, went down to 1.3 or 1.28, and now back up to 2.51. So it can go up and down. It's usually going up. But then those deeds that we get, which have no actual price on them. And you could have a deed transfer between unrelated people. And unfortunately, the state says you must collect transfer tax on that. So if that property was assessed at $100,000, you had to multiply it by 2.51, tax them at $251,000, and then they might have a 50% exemption if it's going from two unmarried, unrelated people to one of those persons. They would get a 50% exemption. So it has to be applied properly, and we have to be on guard for those ones where people are trying to avoid paying that tax, and then we simply notify the State Department of Revenue. They have a real estate tax department that handles those matters.
Wow, interesting. It's something I hadn't realized at all. You talked a little bit about the preservation of records, your interest in history. How would you balance the need to preserve the records with the fact that public access, the public needs to be able to access those records? So how do you balance that?
We took care of that very easily by having a computerized digital copy of every single record. No one has to physically touch those records anymore, okay? Most people look at our Recorder of Deeds records from home, online, on the Recorder of Deeds website, which we put together back in like 2009. So occasionally, someone has a question, and they think, well, I'd rather see the real document. We do get that out, well, we did when I was there. We get that out for the person. We give them white cotton gloves because we don't want them to touch those with their bare hands, because it oils on your fingers and so forth, can eventually cause acid burns in those papers. So we're very careful with the old originals. But one of the unique things that sometimes people ask that question is they may have some old documents, and they look at the documents that are recorded in, say, the 1700s, and they say, well, this looks different. Well, that's because we didn't have photocopiers back then. So the Recorder of Deeds had to have very good penmanship, because they sat with a blank book with a document beside them, which could have been on vellum, like an animal skin, and they had to hand transcribe, word for word, figure for figure, what was exactly on that document. So they don't physically look the same. The handwriting is the recorder's handwriting. So sometimes people come in saying, this doesn't look the same. Why is this? I think there's some mistake here. And we can quickly show them this, and we just remind them, just think, we didn't have copiers back in the 1700s.
Right. So what would the voters, why is this office important to them and the work that is done here? And what else would they need to know in order to make a decision about who to vote for?
The Recorder of Deeds office has a solemn duty to protect and guard your ownership interest in your home through recording the deed, a mortgage, the satisfaction of mortgage, to make sure that after you've paid that property off, that mortgage is noted as being discharged. It's an important job, and it needs to be handled by someone who has a keen interest in those records, in preserving those records, and following all the laws that guard your ownership rights, collecting the taxes properly. It needs to be done by someone who has the knowledge, experience, and the determination to make sure it gets done properly and quickly. There's a timeliness effort. Pennsylvania is called a race to the courthouse state. Whoever gets their document in there first recorded has the right against that property. So if you have several documents coming in at once, if you don't record them in the proper order, which happens right now, unfortunately, that's something that's going on, that can jeopardize your interest in the property.
Okay. Now, some people, when they do hear about what the Recorder of Deeds office does, they wonder why it's an elected position. You could hire a records retention expert at less than the $96,000 salary. Do you feel it needs to be an elected position? And then if you could explain that, why it's an elected position and why it's necessary.
Well, as far as a records expert at $96,000 per year. The office is more than that. You have to be a records expert, you have to be good in computer systems, you have to be good in management, you have to be able to motivate your staff to get them to do their job properly and timely. So there's a lot more to it. And if you look at other department heads in non-elected county offices, they all make more than that. So I don't think just having a recordation person at a lower salary is going to help. But should it be elected? I was asked that question for years, and I always looked at it as, well, that's how Pennsylvania has done it. It's in the county code. We've had an elected recorder of deeds since just after colonial times. Before that, it was appointed by the King of England, so the first recorders in 1752 had a commission from the king. I think it's time it should be changed, but that can only happen if we adopt a home rule charter county, such as Lehigh County, expand our Board of Commissioners to more people, because we can't just change it by law. And if we did change it, I wouldn't want to see the Recorder of Deeds governed by a 3-panel group of commissioners. Because unfortunately, sometimes that 3-panel group of commissioners could be dominated by one person. And if that one person told the Recorder of Deeds, I want that deed to disappear, they might just do it to save their job. So if it was changed, I would have to think you'd have to have a 7 or 11 member panel of commissioners to dilute any type of coercion that could happen to the recorder. But I do think the recorder should be someone who has qualifications. I think I would be hired if it was an elected, a not elected position and a hired position, because I do have those qualifications.
Okay, good. When the housing market is hot and many houses are sold, or properties sold in a short period of time, how will you assure that all deed transfers are recorded properly?
I would do that just as I did it the 12 years that I was recorder. When we had a high influx of deeds, whether it be because the market went up or there was a refinancing boom going on, what we would do, myself and my chief deputy, we would jump in and do the recording ourselves. I know how to do every job in the Recorder of Deeds. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore with the current office holder. There's no one there to jump in a time of stress in the office. So it comes by motivating your staff, keeping them busy throughout the times when it is slow with other projects, so that they're always working at a pretty good clip, and stepping in yourself when there's a pinch, and you have to do that.
Okay. We have a couple minutes left, but we can combine your closing statement with, if you also would like to talk that if you are elected, what do you plan to accomplish in your 4-year term?
First thing that I would do would be to reinstitute a program that I had implemented many years ago for fraud detection. Unfortunately, in some areas, some counties in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of deed fraud going on. Started in Philadelphia, it spread to Montgomery County, and it was people who would prey on vulnerable people, usually someone elderly who was temporarily admitted into a nursing home. They would have to rely on the support of insiders, and they could find that that person didn't have any family. They would sell that person's home out from under them. They'd get out of the nursing home, come home, and find somebody else is living in their house. So we started a program that alerts the homeowners. I don't want to give the details because I don't want to give the fraudsters a way around it. But unfortunately, shortly after I left the office in 2020, that program was just discontinued. I had that all worked out with our district attorney to do that properly. The other thing that I would do right off the bat would be to correct the system that codes. Everything that comes in nowadays is coded with the property's tax identification number. Used to be you would have to search documents by just the person's name. So then you'd have to look up the names of all the prior owners for many years. The parcel identification number system makes it more precise, and it guards against possibly occupying a property that's been contaminated with industrial toxic waste. We have properties contaminated with lead, arsenic, and radioactive materials. Just about a mile from here, radioactive materials were buried. So the process of the normal deed search and record search was just to go back 60 years. And the environmental lien was filed just a bit over 6 years ago. If we don't have a system that codes those properties by number and you can search by the tax ID number, you could end up years from now or your grandchildren living on a property that's been contaminated by environmental hazards.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Fred Sheeler, for sharing your views with us. Viewers, please remember there is another candidate for Recorder of Deeds, Mary Kozak, and you may vote for one. You will find Candidates Upfront interviews on BCTV and its website and YouTube page. For more information on all the candidates, go to the League's online voters guide, vote411.org. Or you can contact Berks County Election Services at 610-478-6490. You can also email them at elections@countyofberks.com. That's contacting the Berks County Election Services if you would like more information on who is running in this election. Thank you for watching Candidates Up Front. I'm Kay Herring. Have a good day.